This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Do you want better mental health? Then BetterHelp is for you. It is affordable, accessible, and most importantly, personalized online therapy. There is a special offer to the Lucy Pod listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/thelucypod. That's better, HELP.com/thelucypod. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode. Please remember that the Lucy Pod is not a replacement for professional medical advice. If you have questions or concerns about your own amazing brain, please speak to a medical professional. I wish to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I speak to you all today, the peoples of the Kulin Nation. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Lucy Pod. I hope that you are all well and staying safe. So the last time you all heard from me, I was in an episode with my lovely boyfriend Trent, and we talked about the ADHD sort of saint and victim and burden complex, talking about a very interesting Reddit all about, all designed for ADHD, partners of ADHDers to vent. And they have some quite, interesting and choice words for their partners, and we talked about that. And I think sort of the underlying discussion in some of that was, I think a lot of ADHDers feel a sense of fear and anxiety when it comes to feeling like a burden. And then I thought, well, it's weird. I've actually not really talked about ADHD and anxiety on the Lucy Pod, and I'm not sure why, because it's something that is very they're both very tied together. And I guess the reason I didn't talk about it is because I kind of felt like, well, I don't suffer from an anxiety disorder, so I feel like maybe it doesn't help to talk about it if I can't be in it. But then I realized, actually, no. Even though I don't have an anxiety disorder, I experience periods in my life of great anxiety and great stress. And I feel like it's okay to talk about, my experience and then, maybe anxiety disorder in a more general sense when it comes to ADHD. But I would love to talk to some more people about how they deal with having, generalized anxiety disorder and ADHD. So if you are someone who fits that bill, fits that criteria, and would like to share their experiences, you can email me or you can message me on Facebook or Instagram at the Lucy Pod. Contact details are always in the description. So let's talk about ADHD and anxiety. So the first thing, and all of this will be put in the description. So I found this interesting. In 2013 and 2014, an estimated 314,000 children aged 4 to 11, almost 14%, experienced a mental disorder. Boys were commonly more affected than girls, 17% compared with 11%. ADHD was one of the most common disorders for children, 8.2%, and is also the most common disorder among boys. This I disagree with, but anyway. Anxiety disorders were the second most common disorders amongst all children who had ADHD. I find this rather interesting but not surprising, because you hear it all the time. ADHD and anxiety go hand in hand. Adults or even children with ADHD lead anxious lives, and the nature of ADHD often makes your life very stressful, and it creates situations and environments that are filled with uncertainty. So that's anxiety's primary level. And I could get into the sort of brain thing about it, but I would much rather have someone with anxiety talk about that. But from my understanding, generalized anxiety disorder is, a chronic condition wherein an individual experiences a constant state of stress. A lot of people I've seen who have anxiety describe it as, so anxiety and stress are a very normal feeling. They're an important feeling. Like if you hear the alarm go off when you're making toast, your body naturally reacts to that and is like, oh, we better fix this. Your body's designed to react to stress to protect you. But with anxiety, that alarm and that toast burning is always happening. and you're always stressed about making toast. So even things that you shouldn't be in a fight or flight about, you are. And that can present itself in many ways. That can present itself in dietary changes, weight changes, energy levels, feeling worthless, feeling anxious, feeling depressed, feeling like you can't do certain things. And then anxiety obviously splinters into other disorders. It goes into agoraphobia. You're scared to go out, scared to socialize, social anxiety, OCD, persistent and repetitive anxious thoughts. It really racks your mind. And I saw something interesting on Reddit. This is when Reddit is actually useful. But someone said that anxiety, the way to describe it is the Jaws theme constantly playing in the background. So this constant sense of foreboding, even when there is no threat and things are going well in life, there is that constant imminent sense of dread that can be incredibly debilitating. Now, when one is ADHD and also has anxiety, that could be considered a comorbid condition. And I think the word comorbid is a very fitting, because it's like, great, so you have ADHD and now you also have anxiety. That's pretty morbid. That's a pretty difficult thing to feel like. At first you might think, but what has ADHD got to do with anxiety? But like I said, ADHD is something that fuels anxiety. Like ADHD is go, 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 precarious situations, impulse, no risk, no risk assessment. And anxiety is like, oh my God, you're doing all of these things. That is terrible. Anxiety is like your very good friend, like this goody-goody. And ADHD is the wild mate who takes them and has them do dangerous things. It's too confusing for the brain to handle with. And if you are someone who hyperfocuses, then anxiety can turn into persistent hyper-focused thoughts. So let's say that everything is going well in your life, but you have this upcoming assignment. Your ADHD or someone's ADHD doesn't mean that, ADHD is a spectrum. Your ADHD will hone in on, oh my God, I have to finish that. I have to finish that project. I'm stressed about it. I'm stressed about it. I'm stressed about it. I'm stressed about it. Until you're hyper-focusing, but you're actually not doing anything about it. So ADHD really doesn't help anxiety. So not everyone who has ADHD has anxiety, and not everyone who has anxiety is ADHD. I'm not trying to say that, but it is incredibly common for people with ADHD to also have anxiety, have the disorder. So that is rather interesting. So I just want to briefly touch on my experience. So I don't have generalized anxiety disorder, thankfully, but I did go through a couple of periods in my life where I was experiencing anxiety. I would call it seasonal anxiety, like seasonal depression, where circumstances were causing me to experience stress, but I wouldn't call it something that was chronic, like something that just stays with me. It was very much a circumstantial thing. So once I found out that I was going on an exchange to France for 6 months, so I found out in July and I was going to go in, January of the next year, I experienced a great deal of stress about this. So even though I ended up having the best time and I'm devastated that I'm not there anymore and I had to come home early, for that period of time, I was incredibly anxious. I had that Jaws theme in the background. When I would be at work, at university, out with friends or with my partner, I would have this immense feeling of dread that something bad was going to happen. And I couldn't honestly, at the time, I believe it was a combination of me going to France and being stressed about that, being away from home, but also my Ritalin, the ADHD medication that I used to be on, was really fueling this. And I hated it because I've never dealt with anxiety on that level. I've had, I'm stressed about a test or I'm stressed about school, but I never went more than a day. So that was very challenging. I didn't really want to talk to anyone about it because I thought that if I did, it would make it real, which is a really warped way of thinking. But for me, I was like, if I don't talk about it, it'll just go away. It's not real. But it definitely was, and it was affecting me. It was a very silent one. You wouldn't have been able to tell, we all have our battles. No, but I really kept it in. And then once I got to France, I was like, oh, that's why I was stressed. And then I went through a period when I was in France, and it was when I was trying to enroll in all my classes and I was settling in. It was within the first week, I had, again, that Jaws theme in the background, and I was very stressed, very anxious. You wouldn't have known it. I tried to do everything to distract myself, but it was just still there at the back of my mind. In terms of physical manifestations, it was just maybe like heart palpitations, crying. Well, that's not really physical, that's emotional. So it was very up here. It was all in my head. It was a very loud voice. It was my voice telling me that something bad was going to happen. And I've now learned that voice, you have to tell it to F off. It's like that monkey on your back. And you have to just tell it to rack off, because, yeah, it doesn't mean anything. And then I think the next period that I went through anxiety was in my first sort of time doing online learning. And this was when we were in lockdown. And I don't even know if I touched on it in my ADHD series where I talked about being in lockdown, probably because I didn't want to, and I felt I was in, not in denial, but it's like, if I don't talk about it, it's not real, like, go away. I experienced that period of time. It was especially during my online classes, because I felt like I wasn't going to make it. I wasn't going to pass. I was falling behind. It was this ongoing sense of dread, and it was really repetitive and really like I focused on it so intensely. And a lot of the time, people with ADHD, even though it's not OCD and I don't have OCD, I have very persistent thoughts, and most of the time those thoughts are great. Like, oh my God, I'm hungry, I'm excited about this. Like, they're good thoughts, they get solved immediately, they're good fun. But when they are persistently anxious, it's really problematic, because I, for the longest time, thought that if I thought about something multiple times and stressed about it, it would change the outcome. And a lot of you might be thinking, that's ridiculous, Lucy, how do you think that? But when you're in a very stressful situation and your body is like, I can't handle this, I don't know what to do, you'll do anything. And in the moment, sometimes stressing feels better, and you're like, oh, maybe it'll change the outcome, and it doesn't. My dad once sat me down and he's like, Luce, you're going through this stressful moment. I think it was when I was waiting on some like test results. And he's like, no matter how much you stress or don't stress, the outcome is going to be the same. So you want to skip lunch because you're stressed? That's not going to change it. Like, you will still have the same outcome. So let's say the result was you've got, I don't know, you've got bad bitch disease, or you don't have bad bitch disease. No matter how much you stress, you're going to have bad bitch disease. It doesn't change it. And that's actually been really helpful for me, because a lot of the time anxiety stems from like wanting to control things. And once you realize that you really can't control much, because life is impossible to control, because every day changes. Like, you don't even know what's going to happen next week. It's inconceivable. Your life becomes so much better. And I say this now because I made a new rule for myself with the persistent thoughts. I let myself get very stressed when the thing is about to happen. So if it's a test, getting a result, I let myself be worried on the day. I can't stress on the lead up, because it gets you sick. There is no point in me feeling horrible while I'm out with my friends, stressing out something that's going to happen on Friday and that's not going to change the outcome. I can't do that. So I was waiting on some results today. And obviously I was stressed in the lead up to it. And I said a couple of times, Trent, I'm stressed, but I didn't let myself get upset, because I knew that whatever I do, no matter how many times I tell Trent or mom or dad that I'm stressed about my appointment, the outcome is still going to be the same. It's either going to be good news or bad news, and nothing, no matter how many times I think about it, how many times I ruminate on it, is that going to change. And it made all the difference. And today, when I went in to get the news, and it was good, hallelujah, and in some fanfare, Trent, when I went in today, I allowed myself to be stressed in the waiting room. I allowed it. And by stressed, I don't mean I allowed myself to wild out, scream, but I allowed myself to go into the, oh my God, what if? And then I went in, faced it, and it turned out to be good news. Now, if it had turned out to be bad news, I don't know what my mindset would have been in, and I don't know if all of those exercises would have helped. But for me personally, and I'm not saying that this is a cure-all for ADHDs with anxiety, but I feel like setting aside a time for your brain to think about the issue and stress is a lot more like, I was going to say ethical. I'm thinking of the word efficace, which is like efficient. Efficient, which is the word efficient in French. It's way more efficient for your brain to be acting as normal and occupying itself with normal thoughts rather than having a whole week with your cortisol levels so high. That's so bad for your body, and then going into an appointment and then it being all for nothing, especially if it's like not bad news. So I feel like setting aside a time to worry about the issue could be helpful. You guys might turn around and be like, no, Lucy, it was the worst thing. It was dreadful. But for me, that's what I like to do. I also now like to change the thoughts. So ADHD can be kind of repetitive. It can kind of be like this, kind of like this hyperfocus honing in. I prefer to find something else to hyperfocus on, especially if like it's a comfort thing. So when, let's say, you know that there's a very stressful thing coming up, you sitting and worrying about it, don't do that. Do something else that you can hyperfocus on. So for me, that is compulsively play Sims. Is it productive? No. Does it make me feel good and does it bring me joy and lower the anxiety levels? Yes. So if that for you is cooking, walking, baking, reading, writing, dancing, robbing a bank, no, I'm kidding. Do that. Hyper-focus on something else. Even if your hyper-focus means that, like, I don't know, instead of listening to that, you know, teacher in your online class, you're playing a bit of Sims, just do that. Hyper-focus on something else. Direct your brain to something else. It's really interesting that ADHD we struggle so much with focus. But yeah, when it comes to anxiety, our brains can focus so much on this one thing that is stressing us out. It's crazy how the brain works. Highly recommend that you speak to a professional. Obviously, I can't give the professional advice. I can't say what medications you should take, what they will tell you. I'm just sharing my experience. I would definitely talk to someone if that's accessible to you. If it's not, there's a lot of resources. Beyond Blue is great. It's really good, especially their chat option if you don't really want to like talk on the phone. I would also suggest the ADHD Foundation helpline and their forum and any other ADHD support group and venting space that has counselors and like clinicians to help is very important, because sometimes, you know, these little tips don't help. And especially if you think you might have generalized anxiety disorder, you know, doing my technique is just maybe is not enough. It's a chemical imbalance thing that you need to get looked at. And there's no shame in getting help. There's no shame in therapy. I am a proud person who goes to therapy. I have two. I have a psychiatrist and I have a psychoanalyst. And there is absolutely no shame in having one. It can be incredibly helpful. Some people, therapy is not their thing. That's fine. But if you haven't tried it or you feel like you're at the end of the road, you need help, I highly, highly recommend that. And when I was going through that anxious period in my life, in the lead up to France, I actually saw my psychiatrist to talk about changing my medications, which she did. And it turned out really well. But being able to talk to someone about it and have them, you know, not talk me off a ledge because I wasn't there yet, but sort of calm me down and explain that this was not a generalized anxiety disorder, but it was a culmination of things, made it a lot easier because I was catastrophizing it in my head. So that's definitely important. And when I do see my other psych and I'm going through something anxious, I talk about it and I find that to be very helpful. But therapy is not a one-size-fits-all. Sometimes you need a couple of things. Some people need meds, therapy. Some people need a combination of things. So just remember on that level that you aren't alone. I know it's very cheesy to say, but you were not alone. I'm still here with you. So definitely remember that. And I think that's all on what I wanted to say about anxiety. It sort of just came to me today because I had my anxious day today. I was very stressed this morning. I let myself be stressed due to the looming appointment that turned out to be okay, which is fantastic, but I was very stressed, but I really dedicated the appointment slot sitting in the waiting room because it's a very long waiting time. I was there for like 3.5 hours. I dedicated that time to be like, stressing out, and it felt a lot better because if I had done that for all of this week, I wouldn't have been able to enjoy a lot of things. I went out with my boyfriend, I ate with him, I ate with my family, I had fun with people. I didn't want to be like ruminating on this. It just doesn't feel good. I'm selfish. I want to feel good during the week. So I've definitely had to change that mindset. But please, if you are a ADHDer who is dealing with any sort of anxiety and you want to talk about it, please, please, please reach out, because the more guests, the better. I hate to sound like a wanker, but it really shows the spectrum of ADHD. I love the Lucy Pod. I think the Lucy Pod is great, but it is not one representation. My ADHD is not the only ADHD. You don't have to relate to me. This doesn't have to be relatable. This can purely be fun and informative. So I really like to have different people because it shows how different, ADHD is and how it affects people differently. Like when I've had other guests on who are ADHD, we're completely different on a lot of things. We can bond, and I love having that neurodiverse bond. We're incredibly different. Like there are some things we didn't agree on, some things we didn't, see and understand for each other. So I really invite you all to share, or if you just have any experiences of being ADHD and anxious, please feel free to share in the comments if you feel comfortable doing that. I would love that. And also, now that I'm on the topic of anxiety, I would really like to do an episode on therapy. I always talk about the benefits of therapy in a lot of my episodes, but I think it would be good to talk about. I have done an episode about sort of accessibility to therapy. I think it's called If I Was a Rich ADHDer. And it talks about sort of the barriers with accessing ADHD, like psychology, or just accessing therapy in general. And I gave a few like resources, but I'd love to do an episode of sort of like how to pick your therapist and talking about therapy. So I think I'm going to do that as a next episode. Fret not, there will be an ADHD Decoded episode coming out. It's going to be with Trent. We said it in the last episode, but I will do another episode definitely now that I'm talking about it on therapy, because I think it would be interesting. And I really hate the word like destigmatize, normalize. I don't like them, but I really want to destigmatize therapy because a lot of people are still weird about saying that they have a therapist. And I come from a background where like French, and in France, like therapy is very normalized. Like it's super normal to have a psychoanalyst and you tell people you're in therapy. Like I remember when I went and like stayed in France and stuff, there were so many people that I met and they were like, oh yeah, like I was in therapy the other day. Like it's not a big deal. Like it's actually weird if you don't have a shrink, or in their words, un psy. Like they're always like, oh ouais, j'ai vu mon psy aujourd'hui. Like they talk about it. It's very normal. Whereas here, it's still kind of like, oh, I don't want anyone to know I'm seeing a psych. And honestly, like if you're someone who is in therapy and for whatever reason you don't feel comfortable sharing, I'm not bagging you. But I'm saying that I feel like sometimes some of those attitudes make people feel like, oh my God, I shouldn't see a therapist because everyone's so ashamed about it, when you shouldn't be. It's super normal. Like therapy doesn't mean there's anything wrong. And let's say you are seeing a therapist because there is something wrong. That doesn't make you bad. But a lot of people think like, oh, people are going to think I'm crazy or I'm a psycho, which is just like negative language. There's nothing wrong with it. So yeah. Anyway, enough rambling on that. Thank you for listening to this episode. It's being recorded in a very good headspace, in a very non-anxious headspace. Thankfully, I have not gone through those periods of anxiety for a long time, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm very happy about that. Of course, I had the stressful day today. When this episode will come out, it won't have been today, but that doesn't matter. But I'm really glad. And I'm here for you all. If you ever want to talk, about anxiety, comment on the Lucy Pod and let's talk about it, because I know that some of my ADHD gals and dudes struggle with anxiety, and it can be really, really, really hard when you're also ADHD. So big love to you. Take care of yourself. If you feel like some of the things I said here resonated and you're a bit worried, there will be resources in the description. Also, do not forget to show me love on all of your favorite streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon, RSS.com, and pretty soon TuneIn, Pandora Radio, and Listen FM or something. I'm on there at the Lucy Pod. And you can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram at the Lucy Pod. Do not forget to show me love there, and I love when you guys interact. So send me love, send me messages, leave me comments, and I will catch you in the next episode. Bye! Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget the special offer to the Lucy Pod listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/thelucypod. That's better, HELP.com, the Lucy Pod.